Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Okay, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, people of all races, colors, and creeds, welcome to the Investigative Journal, the greatest show on earth. You know why? Because we cut through all the fantasies that Washington and the Vatican have created for us. And let me tell you something, there's a million of them. Greg Anthony here on this, Thursday, in this wonderful, wonderful fantasy land called the Earth and the United States. Yes, as the years go on, as we're now in 2019, pushing on 2020, the world seems to get more fanciful and fanciful as we go along. We're all strapped to a computer, and you know something? If you didn't have that cell phone in your hand, you wouldn't know what to do with it. It's a crazy world. But you know, looking at it in perspective, what other choice do we have, right? We're kind of locked in. Aren't we? Well, anyway, I want to start out with that theme. Fantasy. Now, you think, growing up as I did in the new Hollywood world they created, you know, glued to the TV set, watching all of these TV shows, delving into fantasy land, that once you turned off the TV, you were in reality. But nothing could be farther than the truth. In fact, my premise is there's more truth and reality in Hollywood and TV than there is in the real world you live in. You just have to be smart enough to figure it all out. Well, you know, I remember this when I did a few bit parts in movies and got my SAG card. You'd think about this old saying, the whole world is a stage, and we are just actors in it. Well, you know, that's really the truth. We are actors in this complete fantasy land theatrical production that the elites and the Vatican-led Jesuit New World Order have created for us. And boy, do they do a great job with all this technology. Back in the old days, they had to rely on, theater like the Shakespearean theater. And did you know that they also wrote those plays? Oh yeah, you think Shakespeare wrote all those? Forget about it. Go back to some of my old shows, and we talked to a couple scholars who categorically put some really great facts on the table that Shakespeare never really, he existed, but he never wrote any of that stuff. Now, I am not going to go one way or the other. I'm just putting it out there on the table for you. But back then, the Jesuits were busy crafting all of these theater performances all over the world. And go and read about it. It's incredible. And now, they've just basically taken over Hollywood. They like to say that the Jews took over Hollywood. Well, why don't we just say this? Maybe it is the papal court Jews, the ones who work for Rome. But I'll tell you what, ever since I watched that movie with Bing Crosby, The Bells of St. Mary after World War II, that was the Vatican strategy. It was get them on the big screen and propagandize. And if you grew up Catholic like I did, you look back on all the things they put into your head, it doesn't really wash when you start thinking about it. They get you spiritually with all of their traditions and all of the BS you go through when you're a Catholic. They get you politically by undermining the political system. They get you socially by taking over Hollywood. And everything else. And pretty soon, there's going to be no criticism of Rome whatsoever. None. But let me, if you're listened to my show before, you know that I talk a lot about everything is a fictional characterization as created by the elites and the Vatican-led occult New World Order. They create this kind of fiction right from the way the earth is even formed, and they created this whole idea of the universe and Einstein and all this stuff they cannot verify. And they feed it to you. It reminds me of that movie they told you. Remember the movie Truman? And it's not about the president. And he was in this kind of bubble. And what they did is they filmed him every minute of his life from the time he was born. And at the end of the movie, he tries to get out. And basically, they're telling you that there's no way out of this flat earth. And there's a dome right over us. So we're captured into this world. It wouldn't be so bad. Where the hell else are you going to go anyway? I mean, it's big enough for everybody, isn't it? But they had to create this fiction of the globe. And boy, will I get some heat on that. Every time I say that, people go, oh my goodness, where does this guy come from? But anyway, read about it. It's good to open your mind a little bit. Now, I'm not trying to sway your opinions any other way. I'm just putting facts out there on the table, some that I've researched, and I find it very interesting. It would be if I had a lot of money, I'd really like to get to the bottom of it. However, back to the idea that we live in a fantasy world, and we're nothing but stage actors. But most of us are just, like I always said, just extras. If you've ever been on a movie set, they got, you ever see those movies, Ben-Hur and all those other epic movies where they had thousands of people? Well, unless they're computer generated, all these people in the background, like if you watch Seinfeld, you'll see people in the background sitting in the diner. Those are extras. And in most movies, they have to have what they call extras. People to fill in the set. And that's what we are. The only difference is they get paid about $50 to $100 a day, and we get nothing. We pay into this system and get screwed. Well, they should be paying us. Maybe Bernie Sanders is right, or what's that one Democratic candidate? Give everybody $1,000 a year or something? How about $100 a day? Just as an extra would get if it is a fantasy world. And so right down from the papacy all the way down through the different leaders of all the religions in the world, it's nothing more than an ecumenical kumbaya now, orchestrated by the Vatican, through the means of infiltration, of course. They don't want any criticism of Rome. And then when we push our way down to the countries of the world, what really is happening? Well, we see in America now there is a basic struggle between national sovereignty and globalism, right? Well, let's go back a little ways. If you subscribe to the Christian principles, God, in his wisdom, remember after the Tower of Babel, he scattered and divided the people in groups into tribes and nations. He wasn't a dummy, with their own territories and boundaries across the world. And he's figuring, you put these people all in a one world, global world, they'll kill themselves. Or there'll be just one dictator controlling everything, one language. How boring is that? So anyway, these nations have risen and fallen over time. But the last 500 years have formed the basis of ethnic stability and structure, correct? Each with its own king, queen, or emperor as head. For example, I am Polish. My mother was Polish. My father was Polish. My whole family was Polish. I think we had one uncle that was Irish. So I'm a pure blood Pole. And there's a country called Poland, and it has its own king, or we'll call him a democratic elected president. But you see, every country should have this. We all are different, but yet the same. And we all want our own little piece of the world, right? What's wrong with that? And in Poland, they speak a language that maybe they don't understand in Japan. But what is the reason for that? Why didn't the world just have one language and just no boundaries? Well, anyway, over the years, the stability and structure of these countries that God, he scattered everybody, remember? And he created all these languages. And he felt that was good. But Rome has always made war with these sovereign groups, hasn't she? Rome has always made war with these groups of people by controlling their governments. And if we go back and we look at all the instability, now we're coming down to the level of politics here. How do you destroy God's work? How do you destroy these countries? Well, you infiltrate and you take them over, right? Now, we've got these groups of people all living, in their own separate countries, and Rome thinks by controlling their governments, in order to subsume them under its authority, either by attacking them, they used to just attack and kill them during the Protestant Reformation, remember? Or infiltrating and undermining them. That's what they've done today. And let me tell you this, the Jesuit Mission uses both strategies to restore world control over every people group in the world so that all humanity ultimately comes under one authority in Rome, which is who? Pontifex Maximus, the Catholic Pope. As long as a sovereign nation has its own currency, cultural system, and military force, its citizens are free to conduct their business on their own terms with other nations. What's wrong with that? This is sovereign freedom under God to live, work, and worship as people see fit. Sovereign freedom is an obstacle, big, huge obstacle to Rome's control idea. They're control maniacs. They want to control everything. Look at what they did. Just one little example. When I was in Italy from 80 to 85 or 86, 1979 to 86, there was something called the lira, which was the Italian currency. But now everybody in Europe has the euro. Similar, right? Just destroying this idea of sovereignty. Rome has worked through world bodies such as the UN, the World Health Organization, the IMF, the World Bank, the EU, NATO, UNESCO. It created in order to corporatize nations and change their laws by stealth without people being aware of it. Look, I said a long time ago, what is the Vatican's government of choice? It is fascism. And is America a fascist country? People will go, no. We're a republic. We're a democracy. Look at the way we operate. I just have one question. Do you believe that signs and symbols are important? So why in the House of Representatives, behind the Speaker's podium, you see two fasci, just like we're in Rome, one on each side? The fasci, the symbol of fascism. Why? Shouldn't they be, if I was a speaker, or if I was a House of Representatives, the first thing I'd do is, will you please get those down? And they'll come up with some cockamamie idea. But those fasci there are exactly representative of what they want to turn this country into. So papal law is fascism. So don't be deceived by what seems to be innocuous institution. Everybody wants, that's how they get away with things. You don't think that they're dangerous. When your enemy is weak, said who? When you think your enemy is weak, you're more vulnerable than anything. So, Rome stands in the way of freedom. It still does today. And today, most nations are now basically just corporations, registered in D.C., and trading as companies on the stock exchange. And look, you know what is really crazy? If you look at what we've created with technology, these things that we use every day, Google, Facebook, all these things, these are massive tech companies that have more power than any government in the world. And boy, who controls them? Oh, are we in for trouble? But today, all these nations, like I said, are basically just corporations. People everywhere think they are free, but actually, we're nothing but corporate slaves and are taxed heavily with all funds secretly going to Rome via London, and most are totally unaware of it. For example, slaves, corporate slaves. Just an aside. Okay, what is the most important thing you remember about the Civil War? It abolished slavery, right? Where black men now are equal with white men. But what really did happen when the 14th Amendment was passed after that? What it really did is enslaved all of us under this federal umbrella instead of each state having its own sovereignty. So throughout the years, what have we seen? A microcosm of what is to come in the world. We used to have, 13 states, then it grew to 20, and then it's up to what it is today, correct? And each state is supposed to be sovereign. But yet, the federal government is there kind of like a umbrella that originally was supposed to be very, very tiny. And the goal was basically to provide protection for all the states, but to allow the states to pass their own laws, allow the cities to pass their own laws, and give people freedom at the lower levels. But the exact opposite happened when the 14th Amendment passed. It made us all federal corporate slaves, federal citizens, not citizens of our state for legal purposes. And we can get into the minutiae of this, which I've done on many shows, showing how your birth certificate is your bill of lading, and you're nothing but a piece of corporate property to them. So we've all become slaves, now black and white, but we don't even know it. That's what makes it even more dangerous. At least if you were in chains, you'd know it. And there's a kind of a finality or a reason to get out of those chains. But here, you're going to be in chains and you don't even know it. They're invisible chains. But what happened over the years, and if we look at where we're at today, the states are losing more and more of their sovereign power, giving it up to the feds. And that is a microcosm of what Rome has planned for the world. Basically a one-world government, and to top it all off, a one-world religion. So, we have these corporate slaves taxed heavily. Yes, we are taxed heavily. You know, if we were, remember the American Revolution, and just take that sliver of it about taxation without representation. I mean, we should have a million times more reason to revolt based on the tax system today. It's much higher than it was under England. But that's neither here nor there. People are doled out a little bit and they're happy, right? But the Jesuits, their goal all along wants to return power to Rome through Roman maritime and canon law and control over the world's banking systems through central banks in nearly every country except a few. You know, this Vatican, Catholic, Roman Empire, this is the New World Order. And I properly call it on this show the Vatican Jesuit-led New World Order. And all the systems controlled by these people we talk about. Now, these autonomous states, I love talking about this, so we'll do this maybe for a few minutes here, set up by the Jesuits are interesting. I'm looking at pictures of the city of London with their obelisk there, which is not a part of London or England. Then I'm looking at Vatican City with its obelisk in St. Peter's Square, which is not a part of Rome or Italy. Then I'm looking at Washington, D.C. with a big obelisk. They call it our Monument of Freedom. It's actually an occult symbol of ISIS, a phallic symbol, and we've discussed that. And Washington, D.C. is not a part of the United States. Similarities, right? What really is going on is Rome really wants to destroy freedom of thought. Total autonomy from formerly free nations. The Jesuits had to deceive and corrupt politicians and then dumb down and distract the masses so they were unaware of what was taking place around them. I said many times that the Jesuits took control of our educational systems long ago, everywhere when public and private education became available to all. Using ideas based on Freud's theories and developed by the Frankfurt School of Communists in the 30s, they insinuated critical theory into the university curriculums everywhere and undermined patriotism and social cohesiveness in the younger generations. Cultural Marxism permeated society through school programs and pop culture, eroding the very foundation of pride in the national identity and Puritan morality. Now, if we go back even to the American Revolution, many of the elites, the rich people back then, would send their children to Jesuit schools in Europe, even though they were Christians. So where do you think people get their ideas? Well, how about Georgetown University today, right next to the Vatican, right next to the White House? And the School of Foreign Service there, created years ago to educate our diplomats. Most of our diplomats come from there. Jesuit education. Georgetown is a very instrumental university. It was the first Jesuit university in America. And we don't think that the Jesuits in the Vatican created America. It is a crazy story. You know, that I love these people on Fox News and on CNN. They're both they're like cats, cats and dogs fighting each other all the time. But they really don't want to get down to some of these stories and will openly call them conspiracy theories and will not touch them on the news. In fact, just the other day I remember watching one of they love to have these, they have Fox News contributors, CNN News contributors. The latest one is a guy who for years was a Catholic priest. He'd come on the show, talk about certain things when Rome was doing something. And now he's left his robes and he comes on as a civilian. I mean, wow. You don't think that Rome and these people are connected, and they don't, just like when you go to a Protestant church, nobody protests anymore against the Vatican. It's the same thing in all of the news channels and all of our media outlets. They don't touch this story with a 10-foot pole, even though the truth lies there. And it's almost, and that's why I say to end this half hour, we all live in this fantasy world. One that they create. One they create from every aspect. And, unfortunately, most of us will leave this beautiful place not realizing it was a fantasy all along. And you are never allowed to get at the truth. Some people say, hey, so what? I can live pretty happy not knowing anything. What's that old saying, ignorance is bliss? Well, we're not going to be ignorant and blissful in the next half hour. Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today, so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn, the Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the supreme Jesuit command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Okay, back quickly for the second half hour of the Investigative Journal. Go to my website. I'm Greg Anthony at greganthonysjournal.wordpress.com. And you can get shows, if you like, going back well over 15 years regarding what I call the Vatican Jesuit-led New World Order. So, remember that old Cat Stevens song? You know, morning has broken like the first morning. Okay, keep your day job. How about darkness is falling like the first darkness? Okay, darkness is falling. The Jesuits are taking away our freedom of thinking and thought. And you know, when did they start? Years ago. And we've tried to piece that together over the last 10 to 15 years, going all the way back to the Protestant Reformation. But anyway, the Jesuits very early on understood the importance of the media, quietly taking control of things like newspapers, magazines, TV, Hollywood, advertising, and the internet. And they began, through their minions, to write the official narrative for everything, including all of our news, our science, our history. Man, what do we have left? What do we have left? And co-opting, he worked with, infiltrated and became the Freemasons, Jewish businessmen, gangsters, mafia, academics, intelligentsia, and politicians. They have built a system of control over the society the world has never, ever seen before, without anybody knowing it. And I love going back, there was a Jesuit general, they have one that controls the whole Society of Jesus. And there was a Jesuit general years ago, before the internet and before mass communication. He sat there in his office in Borgo Santo Spirito Cinque in Rome and looked out his window. His name was Mr. Jesuit General Tamburini. And he said, from Japan to the New World, from, coast to shining coast, we control the whole world without anybody knowing it. And that's what they do today, because they never change. Now, through mind control, doctored textbooks, doctored news, what Trump calls it fake news, yes, fake news, fluoridated water, drugs, GMO foods, satanic pop music, movie culture, false religions, cults, witchcraft, and New Age mysticism, and a crass consumerism, the Jesuits have kept the masses totally preoccupied with material pleasures. Who was that? The material woman? Lady Gaga? No, that was Madonna. The Jesuits have worked tirelessly, folks, to steer people away from the real purpose of life, which is knowing God, maybe knowing yourself, loving God, and has for fallen humanity and his gift of eternal life in Jesus Christ. I said I was doing this from a Christian perspective, right? For those of you who are not Christians. But to any who would repent and call out to him for healing and forgiveness. Finally, the Jesuits have developed advanced technologies through the U.S. military-industrial complex that now totally mesmerize the masses and even hold forth the promise of a counterfeit eternal life. They have built a system of monitors and controls of communications in every facet of people's lives, in public and private, through starting with your Social Security number, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. The most recent sinister development is the micro-macro interconnectivity of all electronic devices, not yet out. It's called the Internet of Things, the new things. And then they're going to fry you with 5G. Worst yet is 5G. Cell Wi-Fi transmission coming that is being implemented everywhere, which will ionize the atmosphere and irradiate all living things with a deadly barrage of EMF, electromagnetic frequencies. As if it isn't bad enough with 4G and everything else. Eventually, though, out of ignorance and apathy, all freedoms in the world will be relinquished voluntarily by the masses in exchange for what? More convenience, more security, more pleasure, and the promise of immortality. Look, folks, the Jesuits are masters of human psychology and understand that the masses naively follow and believe everything broadcast on their fake media. Few question the official narrative or the direction of society and mankind is taking toward this technologically controlled gulag. We don't even question 9/11 anymore. Most people, oh yeah, the government story, even though it's like a piece of Swiss cheese, makes no sense. We just forget about it. And they go on to do it again, and again, and again. And those who wake up, resist, and attempt to warn others will be silenced. That's really true. Now, the Jesuits connected the ecumenical New Age delusion of a golden age of mankind living in unity and harmony without God is almost complete. They got everybody believing that. And they don't care if you're a Satan worshiper or if you're an atheist. They don't care what you are. As long as you don't protest Rome and you're a true Christian, that's a Protestant that believes in what the Bible said regarding the Antichrist system being the Vatican and Rome. And there's a lot to learn about the Jesuits. And where did I get some of this information? Oh, yes, darknessfalling.com. I like some of the things. I was paraphrasing and using it as a guide. And I find it quite interesting that most people will fall for this stuff. Most people are not going to follow up and research the Jesuits. Most people will either lock it into their system and say, it's conspiracy theory. And then those that do, boy, I'll tell you, you're in for quite a ride. And there are people out there, occasionally on my YouTubes that have been going up, I don't know. I started this long before YouTube. But I get these. I see some of the comments, and there are people out there. For example, one guy sent me a video that he did about the Jesuit Connection to Raytheon and the arms business and whatever they're involved with. It's incredible. And, I remember doing a whole bunch of stories about the central banks and seeing where this all comes from. And the Jesuits are neck deep in it. So there are people out there, search it out. And there are people out there doing, real good stuff about what's happening today. And here's what happens, though. And let me talk about this for 1 minute. When we draw a Jesuit connection, we usually find that it ends, for example, or starts with them going to a Jesuit school, etc., having been brought up Catholic and then picked out to, carry out Rome's bidding. But there are many who don't follow that MO and are in society posing as preachers, posing as different things, actually with their roots in Rome. So it's a very difficult thing to pinpoint. What you got to do is look at their work. Look at how they operate. If you go into one of these ecumenical churches, Protestant churches, and you see the doctrine, that's the tip-off. Where the guy came from is a secondary thing, because really it's the people that he's affecting that are important, and that the doctrine should be pointed out. Okay, so if we go back a little ways, let's talk about their mission. What is the Jesuit? Many people ask me, what do they want? And a good way to look at it is, first they want to eliminate biblical Christians, that's for sure. Orthodox Jews. And they want to merge all these religions into one world religion like we talk about. And that is called ecumenism. And the fascist subjugation of every living soul and the blind servitude of all to Roman Catholic Rome without you even knowing. And the worship of its head, the Antichrist, the Pope, and his system. And that's clearly pointed out in Revelations. Read that. And I always go, there's a quote here, I believe from, I'm not sure where this comes from, but it's really a good one. Let me read this. I think this is Alberto Rivera. Remember the ex-Jesuit who used to infiltrate churches, and he wanted to get straight with God and became a Christian and told the world and then was killed by them? I had the opportunity he was already dead when I came on the scene, but I did have an opportunity to interview his wife, Nuri Rivera, who runs a small ministry still. And wow, what a story that is. And the most dangerous of men are those who appear very religious sometimes, especially when they are organized and in a position of authority. They have the deep respect of people who are ignorant of their ungodly push for power behind the scenes. And these religious men who pretend to love God will resort to anything, murder, revolution, and wars if necessary to help their cause. Because you've heard the old saying, the ends justify the means. That's the Jesuit slogan. They're crafty, intelligent, smooth religious politicians who live in a shadowy world of secrets, intrigue, phony holiness. This pattern seen in the secret history of the Jesuits, in that book, remember? Spiritually speaking, can be seen in the scribes, the Pharisees, the Sadducees at the time of Christ. One of the things we always go back to is the Council of Trent, and this is given to the ecumenical gathering of 25 sessions of chief Roman Catholic clergy in Trento, Italy, over an 18-year period between the time of 1545 and 1563. And really the sole purpose of these meetings was to draft a document containing declarations of war against Protestants and the Protestant Reformation, and all Christian heretics who refused to submit to papal authority and Roman Catholic dogma and teachings and traditions. Just last week I did a show on the genocide in Serbia and the Vatican Connection and the priests involved in actually killing people during that genocide. coming down from Archbishop Stepanek, who was canonized a saint for murdering Orthodox Christians and Jews, etc. And there were horrendous numbers of people killed, 1 million here. And then they said they converted 250,000 to Catholicism. These were numbers they gave to the Vatican. And really the conversion was this: either we cut your head off or kill you, or you convert. So that was going on in 1941 through 1944. So you think it's changed today? Absolutely not. Now, the Protestant, we go back to the Council of Trent, so we know what that was. And these proceedings were directed by the recently formed Society of Jesus, the Pope's new military order, who were authorized to restore the temporal and spiritual authority of the Pope from every land and people worldwide. And that's going on today. They used, the Jesuits, to this document as a declaration of war against all Christians and Jews. So why would we ever get involved with them? Well, because they formed our country. We're behind it. That's a good reason, Greg. Okay. The Jesuits used and continue to use this document as a declaration of war against all Christians and Jews everywhere who will not submit to the authority of Rome. Inquisitions were set up over centuries and persecutions inaugurated that have seen death of untold millions. I just pointed out the genocide in Serbia. Of believers, of people who didn't want to do that, who wanted sovereignty, who wanted to find God on their own terms. The real truth is no one is safe from this persecution. Any nation, tribe, ideology that can't be controlled by Rome will eventually be attacked and annihilated somehow, or changed, or basically you're not going to see your country in the form and shape it is. Many people say that today about America. Well, America doesn't look like America anymore. Well, ask who's changing it, and you'll come right to this story. But our esteemed, rich, and most powerful news media won't touch it because they are basically controlled by them, whether they know it or not. And can you blame a guy? Take a guy that's a Fox broadcaster, like Hannity or Mark Levin. Can you really blame them? I mean, they push a nice right-wing agenda, and I guess if ever all of this was true, and there wasn't this, evil hand behind the scenes, I'd probably, feel that way too today about what's going on. But my only hope is that they can actually understand that there's more to this and give at least some credence to what we say here. Whether you believe it or not, they're always talking about freedom of the press, freedom of thought, freedom of ideas, because the supposed left wing is controlling them and they can't get their word out. Well, think about people that are thinking in these terms. And don't be so quick to paint a brush and call all of these people conspiracy theorists. All right. So the Council document has never been ratified, has never been revoked or amended, and was re-ratified. So we have the Council of Trent never being revoked. It's kind of like Hitler never being excommunicated or amended, and was re-ratified during everybody's heard about the Second Vatican Council between 1962 and 65. Every anathema, threats of which there are over 100 against Christians in the Council of Trent document, were confirmed by Roman Catholics, i.e. the Jesuit clergy, in the Second Vatican Council. So have they changed? So now we have these people who always say that what we talk about in this show, they've changed. Well, we've documented that they haven't changed up until 1962. So have they changed from 1962 till today? So every anathema, like I said, was re-ratified in 1962, 1965 in the Second Vatican Council. This document is a key part of the Jesuit strategy for world control, used against all of mankind. The Papal War counter-reformation against biblical truth is still in progress today and will be fought to the death. The blame and guilt for the horrors and suffering perpetrated against innocent people over the last 500 years and the ocean of blood shed in endless wars and genocides lies at the feet of these instigators, the Jesuits, those merciless and murderous sons of Satan. Now, go read the Council of Trent document. You'll find it interesting. Yep, so we have a huge strategy, and it works this way. There's a strategy they use I always say this, in the spiritual world, and they have one in the non-spiritual world. And you, as a truth seeker, for those of you who are Christian, a soldier of Christ, have to bring these two together. And because too much of one and not the other is not good. So you gotta look at this from both sides of the coin. And boy, it does really then lay open a path for so many questions about what they're doing. So basically, they're destroying the Protestant doctrine. And that's why, folks, today you can see that even our own legislators overlook Christian persecution around the world, and even here, while they talk about everything else. The UN is ass backwards. When you look at the way they view things in the world and how Christians never seem to get a good shake. But anyway, it's a strategy and consists of an assault on Reformation Protestant Christianity and its understanding of the gospel. So they don't want people to do that like they did back then, to read and say, oh, Rome could be the Antichrist. They'd rather have you firmly in their camp as a Catholic, or if you're not, then you can be anything else but a Protestant Christian. Someone who does not protest Rome is okay for them, because they're bringing everybody under that umbrella of ecumenism. The first strategy, of course, is against the Bible. It's against the claim of authority as the divine word of God. That's why they call themselves the Vicar of Christ, God on earth. They want to usurp that. That's not biblical. And I tell people many times, the greatest book I read regarding this was How the Pope Became Infallible, by a priest who was killed over this book, I believe. His name was Bernard Hassler from Germany. And he outlined this crazy doctrine of papal infallibility, which only came into play in the 1800s. Before that, the popes didn't call themselves Christ on earth. Do we know that? No. You grow up, look, I grew up as a Catholic for 12 years in Catholic school, and they never told me about how the doctrine of papal infallibility, how the Pope became Christ on earth, really came down. So really, I recommend this book. You can look it up. How the Pope Became Infallible by Bernard Hassler, a German priest who, I believe, was killed over this book. But we'll never be able to prove it. So, get that book, because that'll give you an idea. They're trying to usurp God's authority right here on earth. That doctrine has no credence whatsoever, has no value, has nothing in it but nonsense. And it was nonsense from the beginning, and it's nonsense today. And every Catholic needs to face that question. I would love that everybody, especially Catholics, read that book. And man, it is incredible how this really came about in the 1800s under a maniacal pope, and the Jesuits, of course, were behind it. And you can go read it for yourself. So we have about a minute and a half. The destruction of Protestant doctrine and faith. They got to get rid of it, and it's working. Because I'll tell you what, you go to a Protestant church today and you're going to get nothing but false doctrine mixed in with a lot of things that you can read in the Bible, like all the great things in Psalms and all these really nice things. Of course, it goes together, but they really don't want to get into, and they have to change certain things in order that Rome is not attacked or is not held out as for what it really is, the mother of all abominations and the Antichrist. Because once that happens, they're done, right? And they know it. That's why the Jesuits were formed back in the 1500s, and that is why they're doing what they're doing today. All right, you can go to my website at greganthonysjournal.wordpress.com, get shows talking about this subject. And also, you know what you can do? Do some homework on your own about this. I don't care if you believe what I say. I don't care if you call me a conspiracy theorist. I don't care what you say. Whether you're in the news, if you're a powerful person, whether you have nothing more than just the shirt on your back, this information is valuable. And hopefully it'll help some people. Back again on the Investigative Journal here on First Amendment Radio.
The book of Revelation says, "The spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ." This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.